The next leg of our journey was from the Gargano National Park down to Alberobello, which is the city that's famous for truly houses. And we did this. We actually still had our car. We drove down to Bari to return the car at the airport there, and then took a train down to Alberobello, which ended up being a train halfway and a bus the other half of the way, which seems to be fairly common. At any rate, we arrived and took a short walk to our house, which is a truly house, and it was located right behind the church that you see here. This is the truly house where we stayed, and right next door to that was it was a kind of a religious shop. It was only open a couple of hours while we were there. And then when you walk around town, you see them decorated in all manner. Some of them very nice, some of them a little bit run down. And as you go to other parts of town, they're almost exclusively these truly houses, just spread all over the hills, and fairly densely packed, as you can see from this. This is one of the favorite restaurants of the whole trip. It was recommended by the hotel staff, and we went in and just nice help, great food. And then this is just a picture of some trees they trimmed to just match, provide some shade in one of the town centers, unusually trimmed. Our first day of riding was just a loop ride out of Alberobello, and included a couple of small towns, a lot of truly houses, and a lot of hills. It was probably one of the hilliest days that we rode. Luckily, it was only about 20 miles long, so it worked out really well. Here we are ready to ride on a fairly typical road. They really did a good job of picking little back roads for us to ride on. And I, for some of the time, attached a GoPro camera to my wrist. And so the videos that you see are all of me with that camera. The first town we came upon on this ride was Puglia, and this lovely church. You find a church in every town, but this one had kind of a striking front, and it was open and allowed us to go inside and see some of the really spectacular interior. And Donna was particularly taken with this creche that they had in the church. After leaving the church, we were heading out of town, and I spotted these rather unusual planters, and then headed on to the town of Noki, where we ended up having our lunch that we'd brought with us because we couldn't find any place that was still open, even though it was only about 1 o'clock. We browsed around town a bit, and after that went on back towards Alberobello, and along the way spotted just a wide variety of unusual stone structures of just every type, and a few farms that have olive trees that are all very well tended and taken care of, until we arrived back at our home in Alberobello. The next day we were traveling from our place in Alberobello to Ostuni, and that's about 24 miles. And this is the morning we started our living room, and we had our bikes in there, getting them loaded up for the day, and another couple of pictures to give you an idea of what the inside of the truly houses looked like. So we headed out, and along the way ran into just a whole variety of truly houses with just a wide variety of designs that were different than anything we'd seen up until that point. Here's another example of the truly houses. You get all kinds of varieties of these things. Okay.
These truly houses were originally made out of stone. people could tear them down real fast. I got a hill here. They could tear them down real fast when they heard the tax collectors were coming. So now they're just perfect conical shapes and redone. The interior has mortar and beautiful wood. We got to stay in one the last 2 nights. Like a little cave.
After a couple of hours writing, we stopped for our morning espresso and then pressed on to the town of Sisterino. And coming into town, encountered these men working on a stone wall. There's lots of stone walls in Puglia. This is the first time we saw anybody actually working on any. And then stumbled upon this structure. Mary was looking at it. She always enjoyed looking at the churches. This turned out to be a grave site. And Donna went over and started talking to one of the locals who turned out to be an English teacher in the town, and got a lot of information about the town and the grave site there. We then had a wonderful lunch and did some riding, did a few hills, but most of it was just good cruising, and ended up at our destination, the town of Ostuni. The next leg of our journey was from Ostuni to Manduria, and that's a total distance of about 32 miles. I decided to get up early and get a couple of early shots of the sunrise and then some of the town before we headed out. In the mornings, we'd usually get out and get riding by about 9:30 in the morning. And on this particular day, we came across these olive trees. They get very old. The oldest olive trees are 2,000 years old. I don't know what these are, but you can tell from the trunks they've been around a long time. We then found these other plants that were covered with a netting, and when you got underneath, you could see these fruit. And the fruit we have yet to identify. Rode a little further and came across these prickly pear with fruit all over them, just thick with that. So, and continued our rides, and through the afternoon just enjoyed a wide variety of country roads and towns and interesting buildings and alleyways, and until we got to our destination of Manduria. As is typical in Italy, in the piazza there, you'd find groups of men sitting around. In this case, there were 3 different groups, all sitting within about 20 feet of each other, but they had their own distinct group, real characters. And tucked away right in the middle of the old part of the city, we found a sign that directed us to our hotel, which was probably one of the best ones we stayed in on the entire trip.